Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and today I'd like to talk to you about CK3 once again. I've been covering this game quite extensively on the channel, and, well, there's something about this game, or rather about the reception of this game, that really, I don't want to say pissed me off, but got me a little bit agitated at the very least, right? And this is that there is a substantial number of people, despite the great reviews both on Steam and on gaming journalist sites and so on and so forth, there is a considerable number of people, a minority, but a vocal minority, that claims that the game has been dumbed down heavily compared to CK2, and that the developers, that Paradox is just pandering to the broader audience, that they want casual mobile gamers to come play CK2, and that they've completely destroyed the game and foregone and done away with all their core fan base because they don't want them anymore, because they want new people to make the money and something along those lines, I don't know. Look, I've talked about this when it came to some different titles and series and some different developers, and I'd like to think I'm quite well-informed and opinionated on this entire topic, and I've been following this sort of quote-unquote trend over the recent years, and for a lot of developers, it was their ruin. I mean, you need only look at Dawn of War 3 to see stuff like that, you know, looking for a broader audience and looking for MOBA players to come play your Warhammer 40k game while basically doing away with most of the 40k elements is not going to work. Crusader Kings is not like that, though. It really, really isn't. And in today's video, I'm going to go through every single mechanic that I've somewhat, at least, acquainted myself well enough with, and I'm going to directly compare them, you know, basically mirror them into CK2 and see whether this game is a lot more complicated or a lot more dumbed down, quote-unquote. And spoilers if you don't want to watch a long video, it's a lot more complicated. The game is equally or more complicated in pretty much all its aspects. If something has been tweaked or removed, it is not because the game is dumbed down, it is because it has been streamlined. And for people, you know, saying that that's the same thing, Google it. Buy a dictionary, help yourself. Stop, get help. Not to be rude, but the game is not dumbed down, and if you're arguing that the game is dumbed down, you should at least know what the word means, right? I think we can all collectively, as a strategy game lovers community, agree on this, right? Good. With that said, it really drives me crazy arguing with people that are claiming that dumbing down, simplifying, well, dumbing down and simplifying I can sort of understand, but making more accessible, streamlining, dumbing down, and removing features is the same thing. That's not the same thing. You cannot argue that, I'm sorry. Okay. With that said, let's actually begin and put my rant aside. I'm going to start off with provinces, right? So, CK2, you'd have counties, duchies, baronies, and then you had the de jure versions of those, which is basically where what area it should hold and what area it actually holds in real life. It's pretty much the same here. So you have duchy titles, kingdom titles, empire titles. This is de jure. If you go over to the realms mode, this is the actual one. Hit Control F. Doesn't actually do anything, but when you actually hit the I'm still getting used to the UI. But if you go to your realm, you can see your vassals, you can see what they hold, etc., etc. You have, basically just have mayors right now, okay? Good. So, what about the actual, you know, counties and a little bit deeper look rather than just the map modes? Well, now, rather than every single click on the map being some form of castle or city, you now actually have a little bit more to work with. You have a little bit more diversity, and I dare say a little bit more realism, because in England, in, what year is it exactly? 867, you did not have a city every 5 feet, right? You did indeed have a lot of wilderness, you had plains, farms, villages, etc., etc. It wasn't all castle, church, city, castle, church, city, every 5 meters. Okay. So, with that said, you now have a lot more complex a lot more complex of a system here. So yes, you do have a castle like this in Leeds. Excellent. It is part of the Earldom of West Riding. However, under this earldom, you do not only have a castle and a city, no. Under it, you have, for example, the Barony of Ripon, which is a barony in the sense of the size of the land, however, it has no holdings. This means that you can construct a holding here. Now, you could do this in CK2 as well. There were empty slots for you to build on. Fair enough, but they weren't empty on the map. So, in this sense, CK3 actually expands on the concept rather than dumbing it down. What you used to have is, for example, the Barony of Leeds, and then within, the County of Leeds, but then within Leeds, you would have slots here, right? And then you can build a church, a castle, a city, etc., etc. Here, it's on the map. So you would build it on the empty plains here, or you would build it down here, and so on and so forth. Good? Good. Next, you have the upgrades for your various, building, well, not for various buildings, but for your various holdings, right? So, for example, I am the direct controller of Leeds Castle here. This is my holding. I can upgrade it with the following. You'll notice that this is a similar amount of upgrades to the previous game, Crusader Kings 2, except here it's made a little bit more sensible. Because previously you could build a barracks, an archery range, a light infantry training camp, I forgot what those are called, you can upgrade the keep, so on and so forth, and all of those 6 different buildings would contribute to more or less the same thing. You having more levies to raise eventually. Here, it's just a barracks. It just gives you plus 125 levies. According to my, because of my realm, this is going to give me heavy infantry damage plus 2, spearman damage plus 2. But they don't stop there, they also give you a military camp. I actually wouldn't mind both of these buildings being 1 just to streamline the whole thing, but no, you have 2. This is levies plus 100, but it gives you different bonuses for archers and skirmishers. So now it's put into 2 different camps rather than 4 or 5. You next have the Hunting Grounds, which gives you tax and a defender's advantage of plus 1, plus it gives your light cavalry upgrades. Then you have the Pastoral Grounds, which both give you more population, ergo more, in other words, more levies, and a little bit of tax. You then have the Farms and Fields, which forgoes the levies in favour of more tax. This is just upgrades for a single holding, okay? So pretty much the same thing, except the system has been expanded upon. Now, while we're still on the same screen, let's take a look at Revolts, Control, and Development. Development used to be handled by Magic in Crusader Kings 2. That's not entirely fair. It's a great game. I love it. I've played like 5,000-6,000 hours of Crusader Kings 2. But development wasn't necessarily something you controlled directly, right? Here, you have a lot more control over the development of your provinces. So, I should probably note, by the way, I'm not even going to go into every single mechanic, because I'm still learning the game, but I'm gonna try and illustrate my point here as best I can in a somewhat lengthy video. So, on the topic of revolts and control and development, you now have a supply limit, which you used to have back in the day as well, except now you can influence that supply limit to a fair amount. So this is based on development and our own realm. Certain traits that you can pick up, certain developments in the technology of the time, so on and so forth, will increase this, and you can actually influence the supply limit a lot more than you could in CK2. Good, good. Next, culture, faith, popular opinion, and control. Control did not used to exist. Control wasn't a thing. The way you would handle revolts in CK2 was you'd wait for the revolt to pop, and then you put it down in blood. Here, you actually have some control over whether the revolt will happen or not, but that's somewhat limited. What you do have are multiple opinion modifiers, sliders, and mechanics that influence your control, the opinion of the people towards you, so on and so forth. So popular opinion is something completely disconnected from the opinion between characters. Okay, so the general populace of the county has an opinion of the character who holds the county. However, this has nothing to do with your opinion of your wife, your children, your neighbours, your vassals, so on and so forth. Popular opinion is the opinion of the people towards you. Engaging in offensive warfare for some civilizations and for some cultures is viewed negatively and will cause popular opinion to go down. Being the wrong culture and the wrong faith will cause popular opinion to go down. Further is 50%, and they view the Vikings, or the Norse, the Danes, and our Scandinavian religions in general as evil, so that reduces popular opinion. How does popular opinion contribute to everything? Well, it does. It's not just an irrelevant thing. It actually does contribute to, I think, the amount of tax. Does actually contribute to the amount of levies. Possibly, but I'm not sure. However, then you have control, which is a different matter altogether. See, control in my case increases monthly, but if I were to conquer provinces and take them after a war, my control over them would be very, very low. Obviously, control is increased by the amount of levies and taxes in the country. By special buildings, by authority focus, for example, which is a lifestyle choice. All of this used to not be a mechanic, and all of this used to not be a thing. Now, fair enough, maybe popular opinion could be a little bit more influential, maybe you could play around with it a little bit more, and maybe you would like to turn this game into a spreadsheet. Fair enough. To each his own. Maybe you would like, exclusively to focus on opinion for the whole game. That's one thing. But I'm arguing that the game wasn't dumbed down here, and this is a whole set of mechanics that used to not be a thing. Now, culture and faith obviously did used to influence your chances of revolt, but there was no popular opinion. Development was barely present. I mean, if you looted a province, you would decrease its development, and then it would just replenish to the cap, and then that's it. Technology of the time used to not be a thing whatsoever. Practically speaking. Here, it actually is a factor. Next, let's take a look at character traits. And oh boy, do I love character traits. So, back in the day of CK2, which was a couple of days ago, you would have a host of character traits, and some of them were irrelevant. Most of them would basically change your character's stats from diplomacy to learning. They would give you bonuses, modifiers as well, for example, to the modifiers to the opinion of your vassals, your family, modifiers to the national tax income, prestige, piety, so on and so forth. They could change the health of your character positively or negatively. Here they do exactly the same thing, as you can see, except there's specific traits from the lifestyle, there's general traits for the character, there are personality traits, and there are education traits. Education traits used to be a thing back in the day as well. You would educate your child and it would get an education trait, but everything else used to be just a general traits category thrown in, and then you get something out of those. Now, however, it's a little bit more segmented, and most importantly, you develop these traits, and you get to pick which traits you're going to get, and you get events that are a lot more meaningful and a lot more interactive. You interact a lot more with your family, with your vassals, so on and so forth. But not only that, certain traits are viewed as heresy, or frowned upon culturally, which did used to be a thing in CK2, but nowhere near enough, and it wasn't really influential. Furthermore, certain traits possessed by your vassals, which I do not have currently. I mean, I have mayors, I need to take a look at those. Here he is. So, for example, this mayor is paranoid, fickle, sadistic, and a flamboyant trickster. So what does this mean? Well, usually, they didn't actually mean that much. The only traits that really mattered in CK2 when it came to managing your vassals were ambitious. Greedy was alright, you know, a factor, but ambitious was really the only one. Ambitious characters would dislike their liege more, but were more prone to expand on their own, so it's sort of a balance thing. Here, their traits play out both to how they're going to interact with you, and to how they're going to interact with the world a heck of a lot more. So not only is the number of traits and the significance of traits the same, it actually isn't. You know, the number of traits, I haven't actually counted the number of traits, but effectively it is the same. Maybe one trait was removed and a different one added, but effectively it doesn't change the quality of the game. Traits are now more influential. Traits now give different and more varying bonuses. Traits now play into the core gameplay elements a lot more. And traits are more complicated. And yet some claim the game was dumbed down, do they? Okay. Let's move over to religion, shall we? Prior to the DLCs, religion was kind of a set of rules that you would play by, right? You could or could not raid, you could or could not marry multiple people, and that's about it. Here, religion has been expanded upon. All the different religions are available off the get-go. All of them, and all of them have different mechanics. All of them have different holy sites. All in the base game. So, with that said, let's dive into religions now. Religion now has tenets as it used to before. Ancestor worship, human sacrifice, and warmonger is for the Astaru, I think? It's basically Norse paganism, right? Tenets used to be a thing in Crusader Kings 2, so I'm not going to really pay much attention to those. And the main and marriage and crime and clergy doctrines were partially a thing. Sins and virtues really weren't, so let's get into those, and we'll talk about these doctrines and crimes and stuff like that, which has been expanded upon once again. So certain traits are considered sins within different religions. In Crusader Kings 2, the same traits were considered sins or virtues across all religions in the game. Greediness, wrath, envy, gluttony were all considered, there are 7, I believe, but all of these traits, the red ones, were considered sins in every single culture, every single religion in the game. From England to India, from Central, East and West Africa to Siberia. Everywhere. Now, virtues and sins are different for each religion. For example, being wrathful, brave, and vengeful are virtues of Norse paganism. However, they are certainly not virtues of Catholicism. And they are also certainly not virtues of orthodoxy. The two, as you can see, share the same sins and virtues, as, you know, makes sense and is the case. However, here, it's very, very different. So the main doctrines are in this case, male-dominated, pluralist, and theocratic, and these are various modifiers and rule changes to the game, and, you know, they allow you or disallow you to do certain things. However, these were more or less present in the previous game as well. They are slightly different, but I wouldn't say that they've been dumbed down or changed in many ways whatsoever. However, this is different. This is an expansion. So clerical gender can now be changed if you reform the religion, but is a factor if you don't. Clerical marriage is a factor. Clerical appointment is a factor. Some of these were present in CK2, some of them weren't. Crime doctrines. Now this is very important. Same-sex relations, deviancy, male adultery, female adultery, kinslaying, and witchcraft are all different crime doctrines which can or may not, are or are not punished depending on the religion. This now plays a serious part into the game, as if you're found out that you have a same-sex relation with someone, you don't get a -5 penalty for your vassals, you're in serious problem. And I mean, it's 867. Yes, you will be in a serious problem in 867 France, or Italy, or Rome, if you're publicly in a, same-sex relationship. That will have serious repercussions to your life. It simply is the case, and now the whole choice, I suppose, because oftentimes it is a choice where how you want to build your character, especially when growing up you have like decisions that you can make whether you want him to be homosexual or not. It's an RPG game. You get to build your own characters and then make your own stories as you play through, right? Now, all of a sudden, a lot of these choices, both with traits, both with actions that you're going to take, they're very, very serious in the sense of they influence your character and your future heavily. This is not only not dumbed down from the game, this is making the game more complicated and a lot more difficult. For example, not same sex. What was I? Yes, cousin marriages and stuff like that. Sexual relationships between cousins, or even closer kin, now aren't just a funny thing that the majority, I dare say, of the Crusader Kings fan base, of the Crusader Kings player base does. Now it actually is a pretty serious thing. It influences the world, it influences how people view you, it gives you a secret. Now what's a secret? Well, used to be that everything you do was either public or unknown until your plot is revealed. Now you have secrets. Dark secrets that nobody in the world knows unless someone finds out about them through intrigue, right? This used to not be a thing. If you were lovers with a close member of your family, everyone would know that and nobody would care most of the time. Sometimes you would get negative opinions. If your family member was married, then yes, you would certainly get negative opinions about that, but most of the time, nobody cared. Now, secrets being a thing, oh, they care. Oh, they care, alright. So let me get to that really quickly. I think that's an intrigue. Yeah, here it is. So, hooks are also a thing. Hooks are basically favors, except in CK2 you used to have to buy favors or earn them through events. Now, hooks are actually a little bit more complicated. And you say the game's dumbed down, huh? So, boats have been removed in favor of just being able to go on them immediately and, you have to pay embarking fees, but that's about it. You just move around your troops without having to raise a navy. Now, historically speaking, this time of, in the time period of CK2, navies weren't exactly a thing at all. You would just use ships for transport. In CK2, ships were not implemented well. I'm sorry, they just weren't. You could have situations where, especially a situation like this, let's say I have 10 ships, okay? 10 ships can carry 1,000 men. I wouldn't be able to move any of my armies. But, Juggernaut, you have 5,000 men, why not just, move them 1,000 at a time? No, you couldn't do that, because each of these regiments is 1,250 men, and I don't have 13 ships. I have 10. I need 13 or more ships to be able to move one of these armies each at a time. Could you reorganize them? In some instances you couldn't. Especially if you have like a big vassal, let's say all of Italy is my vassal, right? I raise his men and he has like 6,000 men. I need 60 ships to move those men. I can't split them. If in the late games, let's say I control London and... Why did I expect this to say London? Okay, Barony of London, sure. Let's say I control London, and it's been expanded a lot, it's, you know, got a whole load of buildings, stuff like that. It has 2,000 levies. Raise 2,000 levies, I only have 19 ships. If it's in CK2 from, like, a city, a castle, and a temple, I could split them off into 3 bits. But if it's from the same castle and it's 2,000 of them, I can't put them on a ship. That's dumb. And realistically, it only affected the game in the very early start date, where ships were scarce. And if you didn't have ships, you could just hire mercenaries, which is effectively what I'm doing here when I right-click and just pay embarking fees. Ships weren't implemented well. Their removal is... okay, it's a little bit... I don't know. Maybe I would have liked to see ships. Maybe I will in the future as DLC, though I heavily doubt it. But this is literally the only mechanic in the entirety of the game that hasn't been made more complicated, more expanded, or more accessible, easier to interact with and control, but not dumbed down. Right? What do I mean by that? Well, let's say I want to make, I want to increase the number of levies, right, that I get from Leeds. What I do is I come here and I build the building. That's pretty streamlined, right? You want to increase levies, you go build the building, levies increase, that's it. What's not streamlined, and what is both complicated but in a bad way, is if in order to build the building in Leeds, I need to go, not just click here and build it, but I need to go over to the court, talk to my steward, have him go to Leeds, construct the building, pay money to the steward, then the building would be constructed. Right? It's effectively doing the same thing. It doesn't add a layer of strategic complexity, I just need to go to talk to the steward in order to do it, and then he needs to go to Leeds, I need to send him on a mission there, and then he goes back, and then that's it. Right? This isn't adding a layer of complicated thinking to the game, this isn't making you think more about, ooh, what I'm gonna do. No, it's just making you go through a chore in order to do something very simple. This is what I mean by streamlined. The game has been streamlined like this, but it's not in any ways more dumb or more simple than Crusader Kings 2, and I've played 5,000 hours of CK2. I like to think in those 5 to 6,000 hours, I'm not entirely sure, but I like to think that in those 6,000 hours of CK2, I've learned a thing or two about the game, and have, you know, and my opinion holds some weight in this respect. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. If you have any questions about the game, if you have any questions about anything really, feel free to ask me down in the comments below. Tell me what you think. Has this game been dumbed down, and, you know, in certain aspects, and what are those aspects if you think so, and I would like to hear from the other side, I suppose, as well. Even though I fundamentally disagree with it, you know, doesn't mean we can't have a civil discussion about it. I understand I was a bit rude at the start, but, you know, it's all for the purposes of entertainment and comedy, right? Anyways, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys next time with more CK content and some other stuff that I do on the channel. So if you enjoy, like, subscribe, and until next time, have fun, take care, and bye-bye.